Welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. I am your host, Matthew Raridan. Boy, do we have an eventful show for you this evening. I've got a couple things I need to get off my chest. We're going to talk about the college football rankings, NFL, Europe games, Thursday night games. We're going to talk about a little bit of college basketball, and who knows what else we're going to talk about. But we got ourselves an eventful night. You guys tuned in just in time. First things first, I'm going to introduce my co-hosts here. First and foremost, we have David Street. And then secondly, we got Ed Smith.
All right, here, let's go.
Gentlemen, how we doing today?
I'm doing great, Matthew. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Anytime there's sports on, I'm doing great. So that's 365 days a year for me.
Right.
But first, I got to get some things off my chest. And I'm going to start with analytic people. And where I'm going to go with this, and you guys already know, CJ Stroud had an amazing performance this last week. And I'm going to give you Matty Ice's cold take on this, because this here, analytic people, they kind of get on my nerves, honestly, because they are constantly looking at numbers, looking at other things, but they're not looking at performance, in my opinion. And the prime example here is CJ Stroud. He did this cognitive test, if you guys don't know, during the NFL Combine, where a lot of these general managers, these scouts, they ask all these questions. They ask off-the-wall questions. And CJ Stroud did not do the best when it came to that. And it's like GMs kind of just were blinded by that, by his performance. Do we not realize what this guy did at Ohio State? CJ Stroud is a beast, and that's coming from an Oregon Ducks fan. You know, we did lose in the national championship to Ohio State, but it's not like they're our rivals. But CJ Stroud is a phenomenal quarterback. And if you watch any of his film, if you were to sit there and say this guy cannot make it in the NFL, then I don't know what you're watching. But for me, these people that think by asking these questions makes you a great quarterback or not. CJ Stroud on Sunday did play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is David Street's NFL team, but he obliterated them. Let's be honest. 470 yards, which is a NFL rookie record in a single game. And on top of that, 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. I mean, that's a near perfect stat sheet in my book. Oh, wait, and they got the win. Now it's perfect. So you're looking at a guy who's evolved this year from beating the Steelers, beating the Bucks. I know you're thinking these aren't the best of teams, but to put up those numbers in the NFL is a hard feat to do, especially as a rookie. College is one thing, the NFL is the big dogs. So these people that are all about analytics, about these test questions. Well, I'll tell you what, he aced my test on Sunday when he threw for 470 yards. So that's how I feel. How do you guys feel when it comes to that?
Yeah, so my feelings on it. So first, let me just get a couple things out of the way. That yes, the Texans, on the strength of Stroud's incredible game, did beat my Bucks. And let me just say that for Todd Bowles, I think he's a very nice guy. I think he's definitely someone that I would like to have speak at my church, and I will always be thankful for his play calling in the Super Bowl. I truly believe that Todd Bowles was the biggest reason we won the Super Bowl a few years ago. But unfortunately, he's just not a good head coach. All right. It's pretty obvious now. We've seen enough from him to know that head coaching is just not his thing. Now, we talk about analytics. All right. Now, I think there are some cases where analytics is actually necessary, because oftentimes analytics will tell you the story that the box score doesn't. Okay. So take for instance, and Matthew, I believe I've mentioned it on here before, but when you talk about interceptions, like if a quarterback throws the ball to the receiver's hands, it bounces off the receiver's hands and goes, into the defender's hands. Well, the box score blames that on the quarterback, but the analytics says no, 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 no. That clearly was not the quarterback's fault. So I think analytics, like I said, can be necessary, but then there's also some times where it's just not necessary at all. And me being the Florida fan, I'll never forget 2020. You guys know about Pro Football Focus, right? So
Yep.
yes, so Pro Football Focus, for like the first 4, 5, 6 games of Florida's season in 2020, you look at Kyle Trask, and the dude was balling out, and yet he kept getting not exactly like low grades, but he could have gotten higher grades from Pro Football Focus because they're just nitpicking the most ridiculous things like, oh well, he had a receiver wide open, or he threw what should have been an interception. It's like, is it really that hard for you guys to give credit where credit is due? And then finally, they just kind of relented and realized, like, oh yeah, this guy is obviously a beast. So analytics necessary a lot of times, but then there are other times where you just want to say, dude, come on, really? That's not necessary.
Yeah, and analytics themselves have kind of creeped into all aspects of almost every sport. And in the end, players got to play. You cannot go into a situation like looking for your next vehicle. You cannot just look at the stat sheet of what the turn radius is, and how quickly can it go from 0 to 60, and think that's the car for me. You've got to get in the car. You've got to feel it. You've got to see what performance it does for you, and that's where the players are. The players have to fill in that spot that you just cannot get from a spreadsheet. And when it comes to coaching, oh, don't get me started about the coaching. The coaching, they have been following analytics so harshly, so minutely over the past few years that it feels like they've almost gotten completely away from the term gut feel. What does the team look like? Does it look like they're going to be able to do this, or do I need to go a different route? No, they stick with this analytics thing until it winds up costing them ball games, and then go, why? Why did that happen? Well, it's because you did not go through the flow of the game. You trusted a spreadsheet more than your own players. And I think that is a complete distrust of your team as a whole. Just looking
And
at on the
gentlemen,
coaching side.
real quick, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in like the mid to late 2010s, didn't the Cleveland Browns try to run their organization purely off of analytics, and then we see where that got them? I could be wrong, as I don't really follow the Browns that much, but I seem to recall them trying to run their team based on analytics.
Yeah, anything the Browns do, I mean, as you can see, it's kind of failed as an organization. I mean, so it doesn't surprise me if they were to do something like that. They just made themselves their own guinea pigs, but they failed miserably.
Yeah, they don't seem to do anything right, but they do have a great defense though. So shout out to that at least.
Yeah. And to piggyback really quick off of what Ed was saying, I mean, I'm going to take a shot here at Brandon Staley, who is the head coach of the Chargers. He is a big analytic guy, and it shows where his future is heading as a head coach, and that's going to be fired here soon. Never have you ever seen in football on a 4th and 2 on your own 30-yard line that you should go for it, but analytics says so. And if you watch a Chargers game, you will see that it's slowed down a little bit, but last season and the year before, Brandon Staley was going for it on those type of plays, and it just makes your head scratch. Yes, I'm an Oregon fan, so of course I like Justin Herbert, but there's one thing to show confidence in your players, but to do bonehead kind of plays and mistakes like that, it's going to lose you games. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened against the Jaguars in the playoffs. The Chargers had this big lead, and they started doing all this analytics stuff, and it gave the momentum to the Jaguars who then end up having that insane comeback to win the game. So yes, there's pros and cons, I will say that, but to see these coaching mistakes like this because of analytics, it's going to lose the game for the teams.
And when
I'll
you
pick.
start losing those games, you start losing the players and you start losing that locker room, and you're going to lose the team completely. So you've got to be able to trust your players and trust everything around you, and not just what you have on that, 14 by 20 size call sheet that you have curled up in your armpit while you're standing around doing this, Mike McCarthy.
Yeah. Speaking of trust, it's that time of year, guys, and I'm not talking about pumpkin spice lattes, or the leaves falling. I'm talking about it's that time of year that we put our trust in this committee. And what committee could that be? That's the College Football Playoff Committee, to release these rankings 1 through 25. And man, they released them yesterday, and we've got our opinions. So, David, I mean, who do you think's trending up in these rankings?
Well, you want to know who I think is trending up? The Ole Miss Rebels out of Oxford, Mississippi. Okay, guys, don't look now. The Rebs are 8-1, and their one loss is to a very, 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 very good Alabama team. Okay, now Ole Miss has an obvious challenge coming up against Georgia, and I'm not saying they're going to pull off the upset, but I am saying that if they do pull off the upset, then don't be surprised. Okay, and then after Georgia, Ole Miss has an easy schedule the rest of the way. All right. Now, are they going to make the playoffs? I'm not sure. I mean, I said before that Alabama is going to win the rest of the regular season schedule, and I still stand by that. And they might win the SEC, but the SEC championship, excuse me. But I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia beat Alabama in the SEC championship, because Georgia, in my opinion, is still more talented than Alabama. And I think, to me, they're still obviously the most talented team in the country. So I could see, Georgia beating Alabama, and then that potentially opens up a path for Ole Miss to kind of pull off a TCU and unexpectedly make the playoffs, right? But guys, look at who Ole Miss is led by. Jackson Dart. He's got the arms. He's got the wheels to pull off the upset. Okay. And what has been beating Kirby Smart defenses lately? Offenses that air it out. Okay. We saw it with Florida in 2020. We saw it with Alabama in 2020 and 2021 in the SEC championship game. We saw it with Joe Burrow and LSU back in 2019. Okay. And then last year, even though it did come in a losing effort, let's not forget that Ohio State did put up 41 on the strength of CJ Stroud's 348 passing yards and 4 touchdowns. Okay. Now, does this method always work? No, it doesn't always work. Case in point, okay, Tennessee last year. All right. But usually, like I said, these offenses that air it out, these are the offenses that give Georgia defenses under Kirby Smart the most trouble. Okay. Even if you don't win, like I said with Ohio State when they didn't win, but they put up a good effort. Okay, even when you don't win, you at least keep them on their heels. And when you look at Ole Miss's offense, they're top 15 in both passing and scoring. Okay, so they have the arsenal to beat Georgia. Again, I'm not saying they're going to beat Georgia. They probably won't, but I am saying that if they do beat Georgia, do not be surprised, especially when you look at how Georgia has played this year. And a lot of teams have been close with them, during certain parts of games. And then, of course, Georgia, just like I said before, they end up out-talenting their opponents. But, guys, I'm looking forward to this game between Ole Miss and Georgia, because if Ole Miss doesn't beat Georgia, then nobody's going to beat Georgia, at least not in the regular season.
Yeah.
That's some pretty good information there. But I'm actually on the opposite side of this here, David. Ole Miss is trending down, in my opinion. They are 2 games behind Alabama because of that head-to-head loss to Alabama. Their goal was to be in the college football playoff. They are in the top 10. There's no reason why they should not have at least some semblance of, we can make it there. But they really don't. There's only 3 games left. There's only 3 games left in this season before the SEC championship game. And for all intents and purposes, they're actually out. They have 1 game. If Alabama wins one more game, they're essentially done. So the big problem I see with Ole Miss is their 4 of their 5 conference wins have all been by 1 score, or less, if you will. That's LSU, Arkansas, Auburn, and Texas A&M. Those are not all real great wins. The only team that they really bludgeoned was Vandy, and who doesn't do that? That score was, I believe, 33-7. So when you're looking at what Ole Miss has to offer as a team, their total offense is 479 yards a game, and they've scored 42 touchdowns. Their defense, which is right around middle of the pack, which is what you should only need with that kind of offense. Now, I mean, 59th in the country at 367 yards a game and giving up 26 touchdowns. They should not be that close with that many teams to get to where they are. There's a difference between making it through a game that you should dominate and not dominating any game because that is what your team is built on. This is a Lane Kiffin team. They are really good. They are right on the precipice of doing something really good, but they are not going to make it there. And it's because they had the one loss that they couldn't have, they had, and it was right up front. And they're just not going to be, trending in any direction that gets them to the playoff, which is when we're looking at the rankings at this point, that's what we're looking for. We are looking for those teams that are going to make it to the playoff. The other team that I see trending down right now, it's Penn State. Here they are again for what feels like the 20th season in a row under James Franklin, playing third fiddle to Ohio State and Michigan. I mean, there is not going to be a team that cannot wait to get out of their division the same way that Penn State does. Drew Aller's trying to become the first Michigan quarterback. Penn State quarterback to beat Michigan in Happy Valley since Sean Clifford did it in 2019. And it took 4 touchdowns by Sean Clifford to do that. So they have the chance, yes. And, they'll get their shot this weekend in the noon window to flip this narrative. But I don't see it happening. I see them still trending down because the overall offensive game plan, that's where I have questions on. Their defense is nasty. That's where they're going to make their hay. But on offense, Drew Aller, he is right in that realm of ranking 121 in the country at 10.5 yards per completion. Now, you're not going to be able to get through those monsters at Michigan by just dinking and dunking down the field. You're going to have to take some shots so you can get some of that run game going. And do they have the opportunity to do that? Yes. Will they do that? I don't think so. And that's why I had them trending down. But really, the overarching narrative of these teams that are trending down, it's because they're out of time. They are out of time to be relevant in this final year of the 4-team playoff. That 4-team playoff, it looms large. Next year, yeah, they would be in. There would be no question about it. But when you're only selecting 4 teams out of this year, these 2 teams are just out of time and they're out of space.
Yeah, they're just
fair enough. I won't argue. Oh, sorry, Maddie.
That's okay. I mean, they're just there for their record right now. I mean, they because they can't be anywhere else because they are out of time, but they're just there essentially for their records right now.
And I will also say, Ed, I can't really argue against you. I agree that Ole Miss probably won't make the playoffs. And if I'm being fair to myself here, I mentioned TCU before, but then again, TCU went undefeated in the regular season, and they lost the conference championship to a very underrated Kansas State team, whereas Ole Miss, lost in the regular season in the beginning.
Very much agreed.
Yeah, I mean, all bias aside, I thought for sure Ed was going the Oklahoma route, but I mean, it's kind of
they're on there.
Yeah,
But
it's self-explanatory at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's Oklahoma picking up that second loss. It really just pretty much threw them down in the rankings, rightfully so. But will that hurt Texas's odds? We'll see. But a lot of people, they want to think that there's controversy maybe in the 1 through 10 rankings, and I really don't think so, and here's why. They'll eventually play themselves out for the most part, and like Ed was saying, I mean, you're looking at an Ole Miss and a Penn State team where their fates are pretty much already sealed, so you're not even really having to worry about them, but the teams that you will is mainly 1 through 7, or actually 1 through 8, sorry, with Alabama there, but it'll eventually play itself out. Whereas for me, my biggest controversy in the top 25 is why the heck is Iowa there? Iowa, they have 2 losses, all right, on the season, but who have they played? This is where it really gets me riled up. You're looking at an Iowa team that is 7-2 with their most impressive win was against a Western Michigan team. Who? Yes, Western Michigan, the little brother, the irrelevant Michigan team. But yet they're in the top 25. They lost 2 weeks ago against a 3-win team at the time in Minnesota, and then barely beat a Northwestern team who only has 4 wins. But yet they're in the top 25. A 4-win Northwestern team who they beat with just a field goal in the last minute. And here's my thing. If you're going to award Michigan that 3 spot, which I will say is rightfully deserved, Michigan is a good team, but if you're going to award them that 3 spot for being undefeated and just kind of demolishing the teams that they've played, even though they've been a bunch of nobodies, why isn't James Madison there in the top 25? Or better yet, why isn't a Liberty team there? They are both undefeated teams, respectfully, but they're not Iowa. Iowa has beat nobody. I really feel like Iowa doesn't deserve to be on there. I know this is irrelevant. Iowa is not making a conference championship. They are not going to go to the playoff. But I just really don't get why they're there, whereas you have Michigan at 3 for their undefeated season so far and pretty much defeating these JV teams, whereas James Madison University and Liberty have done the exact same thing and they're left out. So for me, that's my biggest controversy. I mean, you have to find something besides the 1 through 10 that will play itself out. And to me, that's the biggest controversy, is an Iowa team that's 7-2 that has beat nobody. So that's how I feel.
Well, Matthew, if I can make one argument why Iowa deserves to be in the top 25, because any team that can go 7-2 with that offense, I mean, if we can even say that, then I think they should have some kind of reward, right?
I mean, here's a pat on your back and good job. Go get them next time. But that's all they'll get from me.
And I think they are actually leading the Big Ten West, which gives them the opportunity to go to Slaughter in the Big Ten championship game against whoever comes out of the game.
I was thinking about that right after I said it too. I was like, actually, you know what? They do have a chance to go to the conference championship. They just don't have a chance to go to the playoffs. So let's
not at all
be real on there. So thanks for correcting me. That's where I was wrong. But I still feel that James Madison or Liberty, especially Liberty, after losing their head coach, having now a new head coach then still putting up an undefeated record as they are. I think that they should be in there and not Iowa. But
agreed.
Right now during the fall, it's not just college football season. It's also NFL season. Yes, that is still going on, even though in our opinions, doesn't mean that we're right, but we are. College football is a little bit more superior at the moment. NFL is still there. And yes, I do love NFL. Like I said at the beginning of the show, I love sports. So NFL is right there also. But we're seeing a little different this time around, in a sense of we're seeing these odd games being played. I know that they've been doing it a little bit over the last couple of years. You're seeing Mexico City where they're playing, but now we're doing a lot more of these Europe games. And Ed, do you have a thing or two you would like to say about that?
Yeah, yeah. So this Sunday we're going to have the final installment of the NFL International Series being played in Frankfurt with Indianapolis at New England. And one of the issues is New England loses a home game because they are considered the home team in Germany. That is not anywhere near where a home game should be. But I digress. The the NFL started this in 2007 with the London games, and that's still going on. They did Mexico for 5 seasons, 6 seasons, I should say. Germany, they just got started last year, but they are going to continue on. They've got several different host sites already lined up for years to come when it comes to trying to get these games put out there, and that's why they eventually had to change the name from NFL London to the International Series. But why do they do this? All in all, the NFL is trying to be global. They already own the United States as far as popularity in sports. So why not go take the next step and try and become global? And the whole purpose of that NFL London is to see if it's viable to have a franchise be in London as part of the NFL schedule. My opinion, I don't think it is. It's too big of a travel, especially for those teams on the West Coast. But every NFL team has had to do this. There are some that have done it more. In fact, the team that is most talked about that could relocate to London is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Why do you say? Because they have been to these international games 11 times. That is 5 more times, almost double the amount of times of any other team that has done this. And the next closest is Miami. After that, it's the Las Vegas Raiders. They've been 5 times. The Buccaneers and Rams have both been 4 times. So they've really been trying to find that team that would garner enough interest to have them move or relocate or create more revenue for the league itself, but through advertising, through marketing, and anything in between, just trying to make being outside of the United States viable. Now, what does this do to the fans in the states that are having to wake up at 6:30 a.m. kickoff for the West Coast to watch Indianapolis play New England? This is not a good game to watch at 6:30 in the morning. This is I will check the score after having my second cup of coffee type of football game, as opposed to what it normally is on the West Coast, which is kickoff at 10 a.m. So you wake up after a night being out on Saturday night. You wake up, you start watching football, and then you keep watching football until it's almost bedtime. That is the perfect scenario for a Sunday. But with these games, they are really disrupting the entirety of your Sunday with nothing but football for what seems like 14 to 15 straight hours. Now, as much as I love sports and I love watching football, that can be a bit much, but I'm here for it. I'm here for all the hours of watching football. But to have games like this be our highlight to wake up to, I'm hitting the snooze button. I'm good on that. I mentioned the marketing a second ago. As of last year, they actually launched a international home marketing areas initiative. What does that mean, Ed? Well, what it means is there's a program where designated teams can market designated regions and countries for their team specific. An example of this would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers marketing in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, while San Francisco are marketing Mexico and United Kingdom. That they're trying to create a home field for all these different areas around the world, and it all ties into this globalization of this great game. And it is a great game. NFL, we love you. We just don't want to wake up to watching dog water to get our day started. We want a good matchup, and they just haven't been delivering on that part of it. David, do you have anything to follow up? Any reaction to that?
Yeah, Ed. I think a lot of the points you make are fair. But I have a bit of a different take here, okay? Because to be honest with you guys, I actually don't have too much of a problem with NFL in Europe, okay? Because one, you have to realize that NFL has fans all over the world. It's not just here in this country. They're all over the world. And so the NFL is going to go where its fans are, all right? And the other thing too, you are right. You know, there's always talks about an NFL team potentially relocating overseas, like the Jaguars, or perhaps they might, you know, perhaps they might do expansion over in Europe. Okay, here's at least partially why I don't have an issue with that. Okay, because what happens when a team wins the Super Bowl? Okay, you say that they're world champions, right? Like you win the Super Bowl, you're world champions, and yet you only play in the United States of America against teams that are also only based in the United States of America. I mean, at least with the NHL, MLB, and NBA, at least those teams are playing against teams from Canada. The NFL is the only big four pro sports league in the country that does not have any Canadian-based teams. All right. Now, some people might say, well, they call them, you call them the world champions because they're the best teams in the world and no other team could beat them. You don't know that. How do you know that? Because last time I checked, NFL teams don't play against gridiron football teams from places, say Japan or Germany or England or Canada. And heck, we know that there's a Canadian Football League, the CFL, and I wouldn't mind at least once a year having NFL teams playing CFL teams just to see who's truly superior. Now, is that going to happen? No, obviously it's not going to happen. Well, it probably won't happen, but I think it would still be very entertaining. So again, Ed, I think you make a lot of fair points. But like I said, there's fans all over the world, and at the end of the day, the NFL is a business, and it's going to do whatever it can to make money. Do you have any thoughts, Matt?
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's money to be had, of course, the NFL, I mean, any organization is going to play all their cards that they can on there. I mean, I feel like maybe Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes could kind of use this advice to maybe outsource. They got to fill up that stadium in Miami because they seem to not be able to do that. But yes, there is marketing to be had, of course, throughout the world. I mean, for those of you who don't know, I just got married and was on my honeymoon in Cancun, which is in Mexico, and everywhere we turned, Chiefs fans. Yes, there are bandwagon fans out there. That is a thing, that happens in any sport, and the Chiefs did just win the Super Bowl. But the Chiefs are very popular right now in all around the world. Maybe that's because of Mahomes. We all know it's because of Taylor Swift, but that's a different story. But it's marketing. There is marketing out there. The Chiefs just got lucky that one of their players happens to be dating the most popular probably woman in the world, so that's going to help them out. But
can we just shake that off? Shake it off. Shake it off.
Hey, can we ban Ed from here, please?
Yeah,
Kidding.
Easily, but but at the same time, though, and this is where I'm gonna dive right into this next segment, is the Chiefs just played the Dolphins in Europe, and here in the US, that game's on. Let's say East Coast here, 1:00. That's probably going to be the number one watch game that day. And actually, it was the second least watched game all week this last week with 9.18 million viewers. So is it really helping or is it not? Because just like I said, Chiefs fans are everywhere, right? You got Taylor Swift. Maybe it's because she wasn't at the game. I don't know. But the Chiefs and the Dolphins are two of the top teams in the NFL right now. They have offenses that, I mean, a lot of teams just can't touch, but yet they were the second least watched game that week. So, sorry, correct. Actually, I stand corrected. It was the least watched game that week. So it could be due to the time difference. There's a lot of different factors, but let's talk about another game that is struggling, and that's the Thursday night games. Thursday night games, I feel like they kind of set themselves up for a couple reasons. One of the reasons, and it's kind of obvious, they put a lot of trash teams on those days. I mean, I know I'm not the only one that's seeing it like that, but it seems like the Thursday night games are my least favorite game of the week to watch because they aren't giving us, the fans, that matchup. But secondly, it's on a paid subscription. Not everyone has Prime. Yes, a lot of people do. Amazon Prime is a very popular thing here in the US, but not everyone has it. But you have to have that paid subscription to watch the game. So what exactly they're doing, I couldn't tell you because it is making it tough. But for instance, this last week, and yes, I know I said trash teams, but it was the Steelers versus the Titans. And they were the second least watched game that week with 11.5 million viewers. So it's showing you that they're not probably doing the best on Thursday night games. But is that because of the matchups they're giving us, or is it because it's on Amazon Prime? I mean, what do you guys think as fans?
As
I'll
a
let Ed go
as
since I talked
somebody
last
that
time.
does not have Amazon Prime, I'm not gonna, take an extra day out of my week to go out to a sports bar uh, and watch this game that I really don't care about because, like you said, it's teams that unless you are pulling for those teams, you're not going to make the effort.
And my thoughts on it are that, yeah, like you said, Maddie, it is on a paid subscription, and I recently canceled my Prime account for my own personal reasons. But even if I still have my Prime account, it's still a pain in the butt, okay? Because when you're watching a game on Sunday or a game on Monday, at least you can just take your remote, turn on the TV, surf a few channels, and then bam, it's right there. Whereas with your Amazon Prime account, you have to deal with the pain of typing in your username, typing in your password, going through the menu, just to find it's just a complete pain in the butt. Obviously, we know why the NFL is doing this, because money talks, but come on, man.
Yeah, it's
Now, and go ahead, Matt.
well, it's even if it wasn't on a paid subscription, I still feel like they would struggle. It's a Thursday. It's not a Sunday. It's not a Saturday, and it's not a Monday, which are the days that football is most known for. So it is a Thursday where people still have to work the next day. I feel like that plays a factor. But with it being on a paid subscription and it being another extra step, people just aren't going to do it.
And when Thursday night football started to become a thing way back in the 80s, it was for a special treat. There was a special matchup that they wanted to have highlighted on a Thursday night versus, a specific window or regional coverage ruled the day during those times. So they wanted to have a national coverage game. Well, the only window that was national coverage at that time was Monday Night Football. And that was your big national game. Well, Thursday Night Football came along to have some of those highlighted matchups. Now they are just rolling helmets out there just to say that they have NFL on, as opposed to having meaningful NFL on Thursday nights, which is part of the reason why I myself find myself watching more college football on Thursday nights because it's way more fun to watch these kids play in maybe not the best weather, because we're talking Maction, we're talking these mid America teams that are just out there having fun because they know that they're not going to be in these top 25 rankings that we talked about before. They're playing for each other. They're playing for their their scholarships. They're playing for their education. They're playing for their families. They're playing for their brothers on the team. They're playing for their coaches. This is what football is really exciting to watch is with these college kids is them having a stake put into it because they want it, not because of NIL or I get to be on TV that much more. No, they want to be there because that is their team and they're going to give it their all. And knowing that they're going to be on TV, it gives them a little more motivation, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be any worse off for the wear.
Yeah, I know for me, it seems like unless maybe my team's playing, such as the Steelers on Thursday, for me, it's always usually one night a year that I'm watching on Thursday, and that's usually Thanksgiving. It seems like that's usually a pretty big staple, but that's also because we're off usually that day, and we're able to sit there and watch it. But for the most part, not a whole lot of people are tuning in to watch it on Thursdays, but what they are tuning into is the trade deadline that just passed this last week. And that is in the NFL, where we did see some trades, some big, some small, some needed, especially with injuries right now. And, I think David's got a trade specifically that he wants to talk about that kind of caught his eye in the NFL.
Yes, let's talk about Josh Dobbs being traded from the Arizona Cardinals to the Minnesota Vikings. And guys, this is a story of last week and really the whole week. Okay, this is the story of the whole week because in that game against the Atlanta Falcons, Kirk Cousins was out with an injury, and then rookie Jaron Hall ended up having a concussion in the game. So literally the only healthy quarterback that Minnesota had left at this point was Josh Dobbs. But guys, Josh Dobbs delivered with 3 total touchdowns, including, by the way, the game winner with just over 20 seconds left in the game. And he also led the team in rushing. And his efforts led him to getting the NFC Offensive Player of the Week. And this happened, by the way, 5 days after he got traded, okay? And here's something else too, gentlemen, okay? I have this tweet that I want to read to you guys that is going to blow you away, all right? And maybe you guys are already read this, but it's from a guy named Kevin Seifert from ESPN, and he says, and I quote, "Incredible stories from the Vikings locker room today. Josh Dobbs didn't take a single rep with the offense in practice. No snaps from Garrett Bradbury. Had never thrown passes to anyone and didn't know most of their full names. That's for next week," he said. All right. And yet, Josh Dobbs had absolutely no problem commanding this offense and leading them to a victory. And gentlemen, when you hear that, you should not be surprised at all. And you know why? Because Josh Dobbs is insanely smart. He is quite literally a genius. Guys, he majored in aerospace engineering at Tennessee, for crying out loud. And you probably know that aerospace is considered to be one of the hardest engineering majors ever. All right. This dude is extremely, extremely smart. And listen, even if football doesn't end up, working out for him, and I really hope it does because I like Josh Dobbs a lot. I think he's an incredibly hard worker. I think he's a wonderful human being. But even if Josh Dobbs, even if his career in football doesn't work out, he's going to make a boatload of money thanks to his brain.
I just want to double check, David. Did you say something positive about a Tennessee player there, Josh Dobbs?
Hey,
Yeah.
listen, okay, he's not at Tennessee anymore. Okay, my favorite Bucks player of all time, that's the Tampa Bay Bucks, by the way, is Derek Brooks, a guy who went to FSU. All right, so once you're not at the college anymore, then we're good. We're good.
We could talk, but yes, he is the mad rocket scientist himself, Josh Dobbs. He was a 3rd string quarterback for the Steelers. I watched him study, I watched him play, and you could just tell that guy is smart. And that just shows you exactly what he did on Sunday without taking any reps, without knowing the players' names. He knew enough to know the playbook, and he knew what the routes were, he already knows what the schemes are, and it just shows you who he is as a player. And I love that now he's getting this attention because they're already saying, I saw a tweet earlier, I don't know who it was by, I'll have to, update later, but they already said he's expected to get big money now because of this. Just this performance alone, plus I'm sure others here in the past, he's now going to get a big payday for a max for a second string quarterback. So that just shows you his playing ability, and I do hope it works out for him. He has been in the league for several years now, and I do think it's starting to pay off. So props to him, and it is a big positive for Minnesota for being able to get him during the trade deadline, because it is keeping their season alive, because that NFC North is kind of in limbo right now, so they could sneak their way right in.
Agreed. And as far as a player going from a player that's been in the league for a while and not getting his just due until just recently, let me talk for a second about a player that was just out of the league since February and was just signed on. The LA Rams had to miss this past week's game against the Green Bay Packers and lost 20-3 because they were led by Brett Rippon. Who is Brett Rippon? I only remember Mark Rippon from the early 90s and Washington Redskins. I've never heard of the guy before, but he was the backup for Matthew Stafford going into this season, and he proved very ineffective as they lost to Green Bay 20-3. He threw for only 130 yards, had a fumble and an interception. So it was like, no, this isn't going to work for the Rams. Were like, this isn't going to work for us. So they released Brett Rippon and they brought in Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was released by the Commanders in February of this year. And Carson is a guy that has, all the intangibles. He's been a starting quarterback. He's been somebody that has come into a situation and had to step up, really quickly. And he's done that before, and you wouldn't think anything less of a quarterback that was the number 2 overall pick behind Jared Goff when they came into the league, in a few years ago. And, he was setting the stage on fire with the Eagles until that ACL tear. But overall, Sean McVay, he knows how to pull a quarterback off the trash heap and turn him into a winner. He did that last year with Baker Mayfield, as David can attest, as his starting quarterback for Tampa Bay this year. But last year, Baker was just a guy that was on the street looking for a job. And, Sean McVay brought him in. Baker won his first game while on the team, and they're hoping for lightning in a bottle to reappear with Carson Wentz this time around. We'll just have to sit back and see how that goes. But they were able to get a starting quarterback off the street. I think that bodes well for them getting through this time while Matthew Stafford's going to be out. And that's for different moves that teams have made to bring players onto the roster. There is another quarterback that was already on a roster that's in a new role. And who are we talking about, Maddie?
We are talking about Will Levis. Yes, the gentleman who loves mayonnaise in his coffee. Yes, he should be cut from the team just for that, but they are giving him a chance, and I think it was one of the smartest moves that they've made this year. A lot of people will hate me for saying this, but I watched Will Levis play against the Steelers and against the Falcons, and I thought he looked good, but here is my disclaimer to that. There's not a whole lot of film on him yet in the NFL. Yes, you could look back at his film at Kentucky but in the draft tapes, but playing in the NFL is a different ball game. And I've been impressed with him. I really have. They, just like Anthony Richardson on the Colts, they've said the thing with Will Levis is that he does have a high ceiling, but can he reach it? And I'm not saying that he's already there, because he's not, but you could see that upside within his game. And I saw him make a lot of plays on Thursday against the Steelers that really wowed me. I mean, I saw him being sacked on a screenplay, and he still somehow got the ball off and right into the running back's hands. And the way he was able to do that is because of his frame. If you've not seen this guy, he is massive. Will Levis is humongous. And, just if you watch Cam Newton play, you saw how big he is. Look at Will Levis. He's a big dude out there. He's got that frame on him. Maybe not like Anthony Richardson, but Will Levis, I think, is going to be a good quarterback for the Titans. And I think it worked out that they happened to get DeAndre Hopkins this offseason, because I think that is a great tool for Levis. And I think that's the perfect mentor that he can have there, because you have a veteran receiver who's been in the game for a long time, who has played with many quarterbacks. And another cool thing, though, that I heard about Will Levis on Thursday was he was actually going to the defense for advice. And you don't hear that, I feel like, often, but this is a guy who was going up to Jeffrey Simmons and a lot of these defensive players and was asking them, well, what should I do in this? And yes, defense and offense is split, but to hear a young quarterback like that be mature enough to do that, I think it shows that he has a lot of potential. So I really think it was a positive move for the Titans to make this move. I really don't think Tannehill was taking them anywhere. Tannehill has had his moments, but I think you're just riding that Derrick Henry train. Derrick Henry back there, that is a man right there. Derrick Henry is. But you can only hand him the ball off 40 times a game, so many games. I mean, eventually he's going to get tired and worn out, and all the teams are just going to guess you're going to run it. But to have Will Levis at their quarterback over Tannehill, I think, was the right move to make for the Titans. And I'm really interested to see how he does, not only the rest of this year, but next year. I mean, I think he will be the starter bearing injuries the rest of this year, and then he'll be QB1 going into next year too. So as much as I hate that he puts mayonnaise in his coffee, the guy's got some game.
He's different. Okay, he's got that going for him at least.
And when it comes, I love your point, Maddie, on Will Levis being just a couple of games in. To coin a baseball phrase, it's the adjustment to the adjustment. The entire NFL is going to see in 3 games what Will Levis is all about. How does he adjust to that? And that's really what we're going to see over the last half of this season, going for the Titans.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to take time to really see his potential. I mean, he could go 3 more games and instantly you could be like, all right, well, this guy's a bust. But they didn't use their first round pick on him, just like he was expecting he was going to. But I think that they're wise to make this move, but only time will tell for us fans and for the rest of the NFL to see if this guy really has it. But he is also a rookie, and we can't, put these big expectations on him just yet. But you'll be able to see it within his play. And just like I talked about, this time of year with college football, with NFL, well, we started a new sport this year, and that is college basketball. And it just tipped off. I mean, it is fresh, and there's already been an upset, if I heard correctly, right, guys? I mean, David, big upset that just happened already?
You heard that correctly, because Michigan State, the 4th ranked team in the country, got upset by the 4th president of the United States of America, James Madison. Okay? Now, guys, truthfully, this was an ugly game for both teams, as they shot under 40% from the field. Okay? But the key to James Madison winning, and really was more like the key, to Michigan State losing. And guys, I hope you have a bucket ready to throw up into, because are you ready for this? The Spartans shot just 1 of 20 from beyond the arc, okay? No, I did not stutter. You heard that correctly. 1 of 20. See, there you go, Ed. It's disgusting. Now, James Madison didn't shoot that great either. They shot 8 of 29, but 8 of 29 is still significantly better than one of 20. Okay. And guys, let's talk about the Dukes here because they have been trending up lately under head coach Mark Byington. A couple years ago, they won 15 games. Last year, they won 22 games. And this year, sure, it's only one game, but that was a massive win. And if I'm not mistaken here, I believe that Michigan State was a 16.5-point favorite. So huge upset here. And also, James Madison did return some solid production, including Terrence Edwards, who was the leading scorer for the Dukes last year, and he also led the team in scoring in its first game against Michigan State. And then I just have a couple stats here that I want to read that I got from ESPN. Okay, this was James Madison's second ever game over, or second win ever over a ranked opponent after losing 42 of its last 43 such matchups. And Michigan State is the first AP Top 5 team to lose its season opener at home against an unranked opponent in 22 years. Guys, I just love college basketball. I just love how unpredictable it is. You truly never know what's going to happen. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely not. And I think the craziest thing is you have the fourth president of the United States just win a game, and he's still not as old as Stetson Bennett, who hasn't started in the NFL. But but let's talk about veterans here. Guy who has been around for a while, and that is Bill Self with the Jayhawks. And Ed, you got some numbers here that I'd like to hear to see these numbers.
I got a couple of numbers that I'm pretty sure Bill Self is pretty happy about too. For those that haven't heard, Bill Self, the head coach of Kansas, they amended his existing contract, which was already in place for him to be one of the top paid coaches in college basketball. No. They said, forget that mess. We're going to make you the top paid head coach there is, and basically turning it into a lifetime contract. So right now, what they're looking at is a 5-year, $53 million contract to replace the previous high, which is Rick Pitino, who just got back in to coaching this season. And Bill's earned it. I'm not gonna mince words. Bill has earned his keep. He's been there for 20 years in Lawrence, Kansas, and he has averaged 29 wins a season. That is a gigantic number when it comes to number of wins in a college basketball season. You're also talking about 2 national championships with another Final Four appearance, 20 league titles, and the number 1 ranking going into this season. Last episode, we kind of talked about how that number 1 ranking can be a blessing and a curse, and there were some stats behind that, but that is an accomplishment because that is 20 years of hard work on the road, recruiting, developing, and putting together a program that people want to come to right in the middle of America where there isn't much else but wheat and wind. I've been through there. There ain't nothing but wheat and wind, man. But what you will see this season, not only is this a reward for Bill Self's long tenure with Kansas and how much money he has brought in from the alumni groups and everything because of the profile that he provides Kansas, they are expecting him to hit 800 wins of his coaching career this season. With this contract, and how it goes moving forward, they want to see him hit 1,000 coaching wins at Allen Fieldhouse. That is an amazing accomplishment that I don't know how many times you'll ever see that, because the longevity and the durability of a program like Kansas to get you up to that kind of level is just astounding. And I'm here for it. I congratulate him on getting this contract because it is certainly well-deserved. And I think we all should just tip our cap to how good a coach he's been over the past 20 years.
Yes, it's all that self-worth, and all pun intended. But that is about all we have today, folks. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate all that you support with us. If you could continue to hit that like, hit that subscribe button, please share these videos and share your opinions. Once again, we love to hear what you guys have to say. At the end of the day, I was right. College football is what matters right now. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third. We are headed for home.